welcome to Andy Dennert's Reality Blurred. I'm the aforementioned Andy, the creator of Reality Blurred, and a writer who believes in the power of true stories. Every week I'll take you behind the scenes of reality TV and my writing. On today's show, Survivor 50 has been amazing so far. So what's working so well? I'll share a few thoughts about what I think is making it the season that's popped the most for me in years. Also, 2 recommendations and life advice from an Oscar winner. Welcome. I hope you are doing well this mid-March. We're going to start today with a super recommendation where I focus on one show before I get to my regular recommendations, which is also kind of a combination of on my mind, in which I share what's bouncing around inside my brain. This week, Survivor Season 50. I'm recording this March 18th before I've seen the 4th episode of Survivor 50. But based on the first 3 episodes so far, I'm just loving the season, and it seems to be that's kind of the consensus all around from people who've been kind of sour on Survivor for a few years, or maybe haven't watched in years, or just those who love the show are loving this season. And it's all around been really fun for that reason, because as a Survivor community, we can celebrate it when it's good. It's always dangerous for me to make a sports metaphor comparison thing because I am not a sports person, but I feel like Survivor is kind of like my team. I'm going to stick with it no matter what happens. You know, there's going to be good years and bad years, and maybe there's going to be 30 bad years like some teams, which I won't try to name because I will probably get something wrong. But, you know, I feel like there's these teams that are always aggrieved and never win World Series or Super Bowls or whatever, but their fans stick with them. And that's how I am about Survivor. It was the first big competition reality show that folded all the stuff I loved about Road Rules and Real World into one series. Plus, you know, of course, aspects of shows I loved from childhood, like Double Dare. And here it was on this grand epic scale with storytelling that involved characters and narrative arcs and beautiful cinematography and fun challenges, plus this whole dimension of a game that you play with other people who you may or may not be lying to as part of the game. So just altogether was something that I've loved since the first moment I've watched it. I generally love watching it, and in the recent years I've had some complaints. Now, that's not to say I didn't have complaints previously, but I think the new era started off on a really bad foot and made some big mistakes in terms of the way it changed the game. It also made a lot of really good decisions, like diversifying the cast even more, and that made the show better. But yeah, new era, just not my favorite period in Survivor history. There's been other downswings, so we know the show can perk back up, and that's what it's done for Survivor 50. Obviously, one of the reasons is that this is the first all-star season in years. So we haven't had that since Survivor season 40. So 10 years. There we go. Actual math. When we saw the cast list for this season, it was like a little heavy on new era people. I would have loved to see more people from seasons that were completely ignored, or even long stretches of Survivor's history that were ignored. But watching them, they did a good job of putting together a mix of people whose personalities fold together really well. It is an absolute joy to watch Colby Donaldson from Survivor, the Australian Outback, who's now grizzled and in his 50s. I guess he was probably grizzled when he was in his 20s too. But interact with Rizzo, the Riz God from Survivor 49, who's 25 years old. And so there's this gap in age, and also just like in things like work ethic. You know, there's Rizzo sitting on a log being like, we don't do work in New Survivor, we just talk, and you're not going to keep me from voting you out if you keep working, so don't bother. And it's just like driving Colby nuts. But then they started to bond a little bit, and Colby realized he was 25 when he was on Survivor for the first time too, which is nuts to think about, because Colby from Survivor, the Australian Outback, does not seem the same 25 years old that Rizzo does. But that's just like one of the examples of the kind of cross we're getting between different seasons. Plus, there's storylines and people, like relationships that are coming back. Like we have the kind of Coach Ozzy thing that blew up in that first episode, just extending from the last time they were on a season together. Because some of the returnees are back for a 4th time. And that's a lot of Survivor. And they have lots of history, experience, And it's also interesting to see how they've adjusted. Like, Coach feels much lighter, much different. He's not kind of playing the Dragon Slayer character in the same way that he was in the past. Aubrey really kind of feels refreshed, though also feel bad because it seems like people are still shunning Aubrey for various reasons. So the cast is a great part of why this is working so well and having returning players in the mix. I hope they keep bringing people back in future seasons, not to the degree that we had, there was a stretch of time where I was like, okay, enough already. Let's stop with the returnees. But mostly that was because they weren't full all-star seasons, but they would like throw one or two people in. And that creates this wild imbalance for me. For example, Boston Rob Mariano, check the show notes for a story about him. I'm not even going to talk about it right now, but he came back and basically played against a bunch of starry-eyed newbies and just won kind of easily in his fourth go around. So I think that that's less interesting than seeing people who are on a relatively similar playing field. Of course, like Rizzo having just played Survivor, and 2 weeks ago in the timeline of the show, Survivor season 50 started filming 2 weeks after Survivor 49 concluded. So both Rizzo and Savannah just went right into this, which is absolutely wild to think about, playing that whole game and then doing it immediately again and never having seen any footage of themselves edited or whatever else. So I hope we see more all-star seasons with a mix of people we haven't seen before. And I hope they keep pulling people from the first 39 seasons or the first 10, even if there's people around. And it sounds like from the casting process for season 50, there were definitely people who were in the mix and then weren't. And so bring those people back and, do another all-star season in a year or two. Or, I don't know, maybe do a brand new person season every fall and an all-star season every spring. Is that too much? Maybe that's a bad idea. Let me know. Number one, cast, all-stars working absolutely brilliantly. The second thing that I think is working so well so far is that the show has largely gotten out of the way of the players. Now, this could change. And tonight is the night where we're going to see our first celebrity on screen, and everyone's going to be Googling who Zach Brown is. Is it Zach Brown? Oh my gosh, I don't even know his name. Zach Brown, Survivor. I'm searching right now. I should stop saying Google because Google is useless. Yeah, I think it is. Zach Brown. So he's going to be there during a reward challenge. We've already seen the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol. And as ridiculous as that is, the idol is actually kind of cool. It's one you gift to someone in another tribe, and if they get voted out, it comes back to you. That's a really simple, great twist. It is so much better than some of the other ideas that have come up in recent years. And to kind of like just back away and let the players play is what I always want. And the more kind of like manipulation that happens, like, let's do this to them, let's force them to do that, let's take away votes, all that, it makes the game worse, in my opinion. After the second episode, we saw a preview for the third episode and learned that the tribes would swap. While I generally used to love tribe swaps, I've kind of come to dislike them in the new era, even though they didn't happen for a long time. And that's because with 18 people who we don't know, putting them in tiny little tribes of 6 and then mixing them up immediately after they get used to each other means that we have to get to know them all over again, and they have brand new dynamics. And so just as things are starting to get moving, they reset again, and it hasn't really worked. But I forgot that in all-star seasons, everyone already knows each other. And so when you switch around, you have existing relationships from before the show, but also just people know each other because they were all in Survivor and they have reputations. So it does definitely disrupt some people's games, and some people get screwed based on that random draw. But even the tribe swap worked well. Now, I can't help being me and being a little skeptical in that most of the votes that the quote-unquote fans made last year about Survivor, which weren't all that specific. It was basically like, do you want some twists or all the twists? And they were written in this kind of really leading way. And the fans voted for all the twists. And I don't know what that's going to actually mean. So, again, maybe it does go sideways at some point. But so far, it feels really restrained despite that vote. Again, who knows what the Zach Brown thing will be, or Mr. Beast will be doing when he shows up. But yeah, I'm really enjoying that so far. And the dynamics between the players have been really well edited. I think that's the third thing that I've been really happy with. editing is tough on a competition show. It's tough on any show. You have to condense all this stuff into one small little package. On a competition show like this with strategy, you have to not only make sure the audience understands how the outcome happened, but then you have to like figure out what to pick and choose in terms of showing to lead up to that in terms of all the conversations. And so inevitably they're oversimplifying it. They're leaving stuff out. That happens all the time. This season, it has happened where we've gone into tribal council as viewers not really knowing what's about to happen. And then when it does happen, it's like, okay, that makes sense based on what we've seen so far, even if we didn't see them make the decision. It's been clear, for example, that the tribes have been unanimous in who they're going to get rid of. And we haven't seen the conversations where they're like, yeah, we're all doing this. And the rest of it is faking it for the perfect person that we're going to, vote out here. So we're absolutely being left in the dark about some of it, but that works for me because it's necessary and also because I'm not feeling completely blindsided. It's like that decision, the chain of events all fall together and work. A little tangent here to say that one thing that people are noticing and starting to talk about in interviews, players, and fans talking about, and something I'll probably write about soon, are the pre-game alliances and pre-gaming that happened. It seems that a lot of these players, knowing they were going to be on Survivor 50, connected with each other, whether they were already friends or not, and formed kind of alliances beforehand. That's not coming up on TV. So, and if that's affecting the game, we're missing all of that, and that's unfortunate. I guess I can understand why they wouldn't want to try to explain that on TV as well, but I do think they should. It should be like someone sitting in an interview being like, yeah, I know this person and this person, and we all texted and we're like, yeah, if we're gonna watch each other's backs. Like, I think that's enough. Like, you don't have to go into any detail beyond that, but tell us if that's happening, if that's actually affecting the game, because it happens, and there's nothing the producers can do to stop it, or at least there's nothing that they have done to stop it, and so it's part of the system that's there. But yeah, so the game is unfolding in a way that I think is interesting. That the dynamics, there's so many like possibilities and interesting ways things could go. I'm really ready for the post merge already. I don't want to rush this because I'm enjoying it so much, but I'm also ready to see what happens when they all get together and like, is that when everyone just decides like, oh yeah, we're voting out Suri because otherwise she'll win? Is that the point at which like these pregame alliances take over? But yeah, I'm just really excited to see what's next. And I think so much of the new era seasons, even when I've enjoyed an episode, it kind of like comes and then goes, and then I kind of forget the next week. I've really forgotten a lot of the winners and players from the past few years. Like, I just couldn't name them in the same way that I could, winners and players from those early seasons, or even the seasons around 18, 19, 20, 21, and even into the 30s for some of the seasons. And I think there's been a kind of shift in gameplay too, and I'll bring this full circle back to the cast. And I think the great thing about sort of mixing these new era and old era players is the old era players are bringing a different way of strategizing, different way of creating relationships. If I can generalize this much, I think the new era has largely been characterized by a style of gameplay that is less consequential. It doesn't feel like it has the same weight or stakes. There's a great piece that I will link to in the episode description or show notes of this episode, so check this out. That's an excerpt from a book published 15 years ago about survivor strategy and about the effect Rob Cesternino had on the game. And I think that explains and helped me understand a lot of a shift that happened way back then. And I think that's much worse now, actually, which is where it's kind of like this scorched earth thing where players just don't care about anything except winning, and it's like it's just a card game. And so we lose a little bit of the emotional stakes, we lose some of the social stakes, we lose the sense that these are people playing this game, which isn't to say we haven't had emotional moments and conflicts over the past 10 seasons. We certainly have, but I think there has been this change, and I love seeing these older players, and I don't mean old as an age, but just, although old as an age is helpful too, because we haven't seen players this old as an age for years now, but players from those early seasons have brought something into this game that was missing. And I'm really thrilled that they've done that. I'm really thrilled that Survivor is, really giving them a platform to be back, and also so far has kind of cleared the playing field. There's been some interesting challenges that are different, which is also welcome. And, of course, I think just to look at the meta, like this is a big number season, and Survivor and CBS basically has done a really excellent job of promoting this season. There's been all kinds of interviews and press, and they sent influencers to Fiji, and there's someone who profiled Jeff Probst, and all kinds of stuff that hasn't happened in a while. And I don't know if that's just due to lack of interest, and now there's suddenly interest because it's Survivor 50. But I'm so glad that they gave the show that attention, and I'm glad that the season that they gave attention to is good, because I want reality TV to succeed. I want Survivor to be great. I want to watch a fascinating game that brings up interesting ethical and moral dilemmas, and also just lets us watch people, really trying to figure out how to navigate this really complicated set of circumstances, from the people around them to the environment. It's a great game, and that's why it has lasted for 50 seasons. I would love to see another 50 seasons. I'm not sure if Jeff Probst will stick around for 50 more seasons or if CBS will keep it that long, but I know Survivor still has life in it, and I'm so glad that Survivor season 50 has proven that to those of us who were a little bit not as thrilled with what we've seen, in the past few years. But it's great, so I'm going to end on a positive note. Happy Survivor 50. Yay! On to recommendations, where I share things that are bringing joy and entertainment into my life. And this week, it's entertainment in the form of film and cinema and movies and scripted ones, because we just finished the Oscar season and the Oscars aired. And I just want to highlight two films, one of which is related to the Oscars, the other not at all, as you'll see in a second. So the first is Sinners. I think Sinners should have won Best Picture. I say that as someone who did not see the movie that won Best Picture yet, so maybe I'll change my mind once I see it. But Sinners was just one of those all-time great films that is just beautiful art, incredibly well-crafted. Every single performance, every single set piece, the music, the editing, the cinematography, all of it is just coming together. And that's what I love about, that's what I think, like, if you're going to Best Picture movie, that's what we're looking for. It's a action thriller that's also a period piece and gives us a sense of history, and there's vampires and some blood and gore, but it's also just not that for the sake of that. And there's some real stakes and just incredible relationships, and all of it's great. So check out Sinners if you haven't watched it, or if you have, watch it again. It's on HBO Max right now. Also great. I'm going to add a third here. I think I said I had two recommendations, and I'm just remembering right now because this is another Oscar winner, and that is the movie Weapons. Weapons is much more of a traditional horror movie, and I don't think it's as great a film as Sinners overall. I think it's a really strong movie, and one, again, I'm recommending that you see it, in part for Amy Madigan's performance, and in part just because of the interesting way it's structured. And there's just some like incredibly scary and, dark kind of moments. And then it's also really fun and ridiculous, especially at the end. So I won't say any more, but check out Weapons, also streaming on HBO Max. The third film that I will recommend is not an Oscar winner, alas, but it is a delight nevertheless. It's streaming on Paramount Plus. It's called Fight or Flight. It stars Josh Hartnett. It came out in 2024. As best I can see, it did not really get a lot of attention back then. I don't think I even heard of it when it was in theaters, if it was for a long time. But the best way I can describe it is John Wick on a plane plus comedy. So there's just a lot of comic and gross, but comedically gross violence, and all in the confines of a plane. And Josh Hartnett is just doing a great job in this role. Just super fun. So like a light kind of thing if you need a little bit of escapism, or from work, from the news, whatever. I think Fight or Flight is a great place to start. Okay, that's everything for today. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to send me your feedback, questions, and thoughts. And if you're in a 5-star mood, tap that in your podcast app right now to really help me out. I so appreciate it. Our theme song is Cheery Monday by Kevin MacLeod, and this episode is by me, Andy Dennert, and is copyright 2026 by Reality Blurred LLC, which is also me. You can find me at realityblurred.com and andydennert.com. I'll leave you, as always, with life advice from TV, this time from the Oscar-winning director of Mr. Nobody Against Putin, a documentary about a teacher who filmed his life inside Russia. Here's its director, David Bornstein, accepting the award at the Oscars and sharing an observation.
Mr. Nobody Against Putin is about how you lose your country. And what we saw when working with this footage, it's that you lose it through countless small little acts of complicity. When we act complicit, when a government murders people on the streets of our major cities. When we don't say anything, when oligarchs take over the media and control how we could produce it and consume it. We all face a moral choice, but luckily, even a nobody is more powerful than you think.